one thing that I've learned in real estate is, there's plenty of lenders, but there are not a lot of deals. So if the deal makes sense, you'll find someone to fund it.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth podcast, where I, Kyle, from Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? The guest on this week's episode of the podcast is absolutely awesome and has one heck of a story. Charne was born and raised in Boston and started off her real estate career with a job as an assistant in a real estate office, later got her agent license and started doing rentals, and then discovered her passion for the investing side of the business. She has worn several different hats in the industry thus far and is extremely inspiring. In this episode, Charne and I talk about building and leaving a legacy, teaching the next generation and inspiring people, avoiding getting stuck, and so much more. She has a really cool story and I hope you enjoy. Let's jump right into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 74 of the Creating Wealth podcast. Today, we get the great pleasure of chatting with Charne Dixon, an absolutely phenomenal Boston-based real estate agent and investor doing some really great things. What's going on, Charne? How's everything going?
Hey, Kyle. Hey, everything is good. Everything is good. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. I'm very excited to chat with you again on here.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so, if we could jump right in, tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you kind of got the real estate bug, so to say, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Real estate, actually, I kind of got interested in it in like high school. My mom was a realtor. I didn't really know what that meant. I would say I would just kind of like sometimes go with her after school to like appointments to show apartments. And I would just kind of either run around the apartment or sit in the car. So that's what I thought that real estate was. And then the summer before I went to college, I actually got an assistant at a real estate office I got a job as an assistant at a real estate office. And it was pretty cool. I just was like updating the databases and kind of seeing what was available on the market. And that's when I really would say that it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. I like what they do. But then I went to college. I played Division I basketball. So after that summer, I went away to school. And I always had it in the back of my mind that, once I graduate and I'm done with college, like I really want to get into real estate. I want to get my license and, be like the agents in my office. And so that's exactly what I did. After I graduated college, I came home, I took the class, I took the test, I got my license. And, I was a rental agent for like a couple years, part-time. I thought I was making some money, get a commission here, a commission there. And then probably a few years later, I got tapped in on the investment side. And I was like, man, this is amazing. And I went on like a rabbit hole on YouTube on what it was like to like wholesale real estate, to do sales, because I was only doing rentals at the time, what it was like to buy and flip. And I just got super curious. And probably like 2018, I bought my first property, and I haven't looked back since then.
All right. That's absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome too. The like when you first discover it and all of a sudden it's like the universe explodes and like there's like all these different avenues and like everything's crazy all of a sudden, and
Seriously.
It's like the coolest thing in the world.
It is. It's one of the things I love about real estate is that there's so many different ways where you can become active or how you can make money. At the time, all I knew was rentals, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This was like to be a realtor. And then the transition to helping people buy a house, then I was like, wow, this is cool too. To be able to purchase my own, so I went through all the phases, which was cool. I've wholesaled some too, and just kind of figured out what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah. I think that's really valuable too, to kind of be able to taste, different parts of real estate and you like the rental side for a little bit,
Mhm.
and then transitioned into like working with buyers and stuff to like representing yourself on transactions and stuff like that, and kind of
Absolutely.
figuring out like, what you more favorite over different parts of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely huge, to be able to like just do like different things and everything, and maybe not just stick to like one category like within real estate. To be
Yeah.
on like different parts of it.
Definitely. I recommend anyone who wants to be involved to, explore all the different options that real estate has to offer and figure out what's your niche and, what excites you,
Yeah.
and what actually kind of is in your wheelhouse, and then focus there.
Yeah,
For
definitely.
sure.
So
So, no, go
so
ahead.
sorry. So take us through the kind of like your first property that you bought on your own. Like was it a like a buy and hold or a flip?
Yeah, sure. It was a flip. And it kind of happened on accident, and I'm grateful for it. But I would say I have reached a point where I was doing some wholesaling. I was finding some off market properties and flipping them to investors. And I realized I really like working with investors. They would tell me what their criteria was and what they liked, and I would go and find it. So I went and found this single family house in Hyde Park, Mass, um, which is in Boston. And I pitched it to one of my investors, a couple of them. And they were like, it's not enough meat on the bones for me. But in my mind, I was running the numbers. I'm like, yo, this makes sense. And actually, one of my colleagues, he was I pitched it to him, and he was like, Charne, when are you going to start doing some deals yourself? And like it just started ringing in my head, like maybe I should do this deal. And so I started just trying to put all the pieces together, and finally, like I got it to a point where it made sense. I knew potentially where the money could come from. Um, I knew about how much I needed, and like I said, I believed in the deal. I believed in the purchase price. I knew how much work it needed, and I knew the area. I'm born and raised in Boston, so I knew what the ARV could be, and so I put my offer in, and I hoped that it would come through, and the offer got accepted, and the financing that I had lined up actually fell through. And so I was like, oh shit.
Oh no. Yeah.
Right, like what am I going to do? But just believing in the process. And one thing that I've learned in real estate is, there's plenty of lenders, but there are not a lot of deals. So if the deal makes sense, you'll find someone to fund it. And that's exactly what happened. The deal made sense. I found another lender. I found out how much money I needed. I lived off ramen noodles for a couple months. I was going to my
Nice.
mom's house every night for dinner. Like, what'd you cook, mom? I clear out all my bank accounts, but I really, I believed in myself, and I believed in the deal. And so, yeah, my offer got accepted. My funding went through. It was a flip project. So, it didn't go smoothly, but what real estate project does, right? I
Mhm.
learned a lot of lessons, but, we ended out on top. And what I projected to be, like maybe like a 5-figure cash out ended up being a 6-figure cash out, because by the time we went to market, the value was up there, and I was just like, wow, I can really do this. So it actually ended up being a deal in Hyde Park that I tried to sell to an investor. He didn't want it. I put the offer in myself. I found the funding, and I went through some hurdles, but I made it to the finish line, and I haven't looked back since.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah,
that so much.
it was cool.
That's crazy too, especially like, to be able to, like you said, like it didn't go, 100% smoothly, but like you still ended up on top, and like learned a bunch of lessons along the way and like still crushed the deal, even though somebody else might have turned it down,
It
and
did. It did. And it's something that I kind of stand by, and I always tell new investors is like, what may not make sense to a seasoned investor may make sense to you, because, I have investors who, if it doesn't make 6 figures or more, they don't touch it, but they've earned that right to say no, right? As a newbie like myself, it was my first deal. And I think I had the spread with me making like $40,000. And I was like, I'm okay with
let's
that.
do it.
Like, it's worth my time. And, I ended up making like twice that. So it's just the way that the market went. But it all started with me not being too egotistical, knowing and understanding the numbers and being willing to just kind of get that experience for a lower payout,
Yeah.
that ended up into, a bigger payout. So I'm grateful. It could have obviously went either way. But nonetheless, it was just being willing to, get the experience and take a lower payout in the
Yeah.
beginning that turned into a grand slam.
That's huge. The tuition cost is everything, right? And like learning as many lessons as you can and like getting paid for it is twice as dope.
That's literally it. I was like telling my friends and like, my family, like, worst case scenario, it's like getting paid to learn because you're either gonna get a little bit of money, even like I'm like 40,000, maybe if worst case scenario, I'll
Yeah.
make like 10 or 5. But to have gone through the process and just experience things that like are invaluable lessons that you're never gonna learn on a blog
Yeah.
or in a book, it was definitely priceless, and God willing, it worked out in my favor. But I think that the biggest thing was being able to take that leap of faith.
Yeah. Of course. That's something that I've realized relatively recently actually is the being able to really like take some of those situations that happen to you, that sometimes aren't really looking too good in the moment, if like something breaks or you know uh, something with a contractor doesn't line up or something like that, and just being able to like take a step back and just kind of like rationalize and figure out how to fix it, and then being able to take that solution and leverage it over and over again, like into like your next house or your next flip or what have you, and pretty much
Yeah,
like just kind of absorb as much as you can, whether you're profiting or you're not.
absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, it worked out well. It worked out well. That
That's
was
awesome.
my first project.
That's awesome. So Charne, what's kind of your drive and your vision for the long term?
Absolutely. So my drive is really just, wanting to be better.
Yeah.
I'm an athlete, just naturally, I'm always looking for ways to improve myself, my situation, my family. And I just think bigger picture, what do I want to leave behind, and that's what really drives me is just thinking about like legacy and like, after like when I'm gone or, when I'm retired, like what have I contributed, to this world or to my family. And, that goes hand in hand with my vision. My vision is to be able to create, an empire, to create something that is not only beneficial for me, but my kids and their kids and generations to come. So whether that be through the knowledge that I learn, the properties I acquire, whatever I'm able to pass down, it definitely drives me. I like to take what I think that my mom kind of instilled in me and just kind of take it to the next level.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Like that kind of why is, a force to be reckoned with. Right.
Yeah,
It's just to be able to like get through, some of the tougher times, and just think of like, that you're creating something that's like much bigger like than yourself, and like, can impact tons and tons of people for generations.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that finding your why is super important. And it found me, it took me a little bit of time to get there
Yeah.
because right as of right now, I don't have any kids yet. But it is something that, I want to have in the future. And uh, outside of myself, because, that you don't want to be too selfish. At some point, that's not enough motivation.
Yeah.
um, I try to think about what my parents or my mom specifically has created and instilled in me and what that would look like for the next generation. And, better be prepared than sorry. So
Of
it's
course.
been definitely motivation for me. When
Hmm.
I don't feel like doing it for myself, I try to think about, the legacy that I want to leave behind.
Yeah. That's
For
huge. Like one thing that my mom, kind of instilled in me was like, if you wanted something, like just go out and get it.
Yeah.
And like it's something like just as simple as that to, that's so applicable to, like the things that we're trying to do. And just to be able to follow that advice and then magnify it and just kind of, show like your kids and family and stuff like that, like what's possible. And and just kind of like magnify that same like idealism, I guess, for the next generation.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And even in the meantime, just feeling like an inspiration to the people around you.
Yeah.
I have so many people who reach out and, they ask like, oh, how did you get started? And although I feel like my story may not be significant or it's just another drop in the bucket, you never realize how many people you're impacting. And so it feels good to be able to kind of like be a resource to my immediate circle or people who just kind of find me online and they reach out. I'm always responding to DMs, and the more and more I get the question of like, how did you get started? The more and more I feel like inclined and just motivated to share my story and to share my resources, because like it's cool to look next to you, to your left and to your right, and to see your friend doing the same thing and their friend doing the same thing. And it's just a new generation of real estate investors, or things that maybe we didn't think were possible. And then once you do it once, you realize like, oh, that's all it took. Like, not that it was easy. It took a lot of work, but
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of hard work. And I think a lot of people who ask me those questions aren't either. So I just try to be an open book and a resource as much as I can. And, that's a part of my vision. That was the second part of the question. My vision for real estate is just to continue to build my portfolio, to be a resource to others who are looking to do the same things that I'm doing. And to, just leave something positive behind, whether that be uh, a portfolio, money, assets for my family, or knowledge and resources to my friends or other people who want to get involved.
Yeah. That's absolutely golden. And I totally agree with you there of like, taking like the knowledge and stuff like that you pick up from, experience and having just conversations and reading books and podcasts and, all this stuff. And just being able to kind of, help people up I'm going to use an analogy that another guest used recently actually. Of he basically looked at personal finance like a mountain. And
Mm,
like whenever you walk up to that mountain, there's going to be people at like the tippity top, like, that have already gone through all the struggles and everything. There's going to be the people like halfway down the mountain that are still figuring things out, but, decently on their way. And
mhm.
then there's going to be the people, still just beginning.
Yeah.
And I mean, eventually, going to start to gain some traction and, you're going to realize, like you said, like, people will reach out to you. You'll just be having conversations and, you'll just kind of realize all of a sudden, like the amount of value that you can give from your experience. And
Mhm.
that's something I totally agree with is to, be able to like take the knowledge from like all of these places, like just from, like us absorbing from wherever and that kind of thing, using that information and then
Mhm.
making sure, we bring other people up as well, and just kind of like continue the circle. And it's so valuable, it's a lot of fun,
No,
like
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I think even this podcast is amazing, like being able to put these resources together, let people tell their story, and give this information out to the masses, because I'm sure in each podcast that you do, there's a nugget that maybe someone didn't think of, or resource that someone didn't know about, that could be the key factor to helping them get to the next level or take that next step. So I think podcasts like these are super important for the culture, super important for sharing resources and knowledge, and help bridge that gap and building financial freedom, especially for our generation.
thank you so much, Charne. It means a lot.
No, seriously, I seriously mean that. So thank you as well.
Yeah, and it's like one thing that like I always have found like extreme gratitude in is like the amount of times that I've had like, just conversations with like investors on Instagram or like, just over the phone or something and, just going back and forth. and like you're telling them about, something that you got going on, or like, what the next barrier is that you're trying to get through. And
Mhm.
like they just drop like one or two sentences like really casually, and like it totally like rocks your world, and like that's the solution that you were looking for. And like
Mhm.
I like absolutely live by that, and like the way I think about it is like, that's happened like several times to me. Like there was one time that shout out to Nate Swift. Um, he was an investor out in Springfield last year that I interviewed on here. And I was figuring out when it came to like getting pre-approved and stuff like that for like my first buy and hold. And I was like, oh, I just started this job, like I've only been here for a year. And the bank always says, like, oh, you need 2 years of W-2 income and like all this stuff. I'm like, man, I gotta wait a whole nother year. And one thing that I left out was I tried out like community college, like full time, quote unquote. Right before that, like trying to figure out my life. And he's like, "Nah, dude, you're ready." I'm like, "What are you talking about, Nate?" He's like, "Dude, like you're ready." He's like, "Go to your loan officer like tomorrow." He's like, "Because they might be able to take your full year of school plus your full year of W-2 income that you just got and count that as your 2 years." And sure as anything, like a couple days after that, I was pre-approved. Like that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. Like one like casual conversation, like one sentence from
Seriously.
one conversation. And
Yep.
I'm like, if we can like have people on to like tell their stories and everything, and like if we can like flip the script and like you said, be able to give that nugget to somebody else and like completely change their world and put them on the next step. Like I feel like that's everything, just
No,
giving.
absolutely. I agree 100%. And I've been in that conversation multiple times as a realtor, just kind of with friends and family, where I like to say they have all these preconceived notions on what it takes to get qualified. And so they like psych themselves out before they even get told no. And I have to tell them, like, don't be afraid of the no, right? Have the conversation so that you can talk to a loan officer or a lender. And they're either going to say, hey, you're pre approved and this is how much you can spend. And now let's go celebrate. Or they're going to say, hey, you're not pre approved today, but do X, Y, and Z, and let's talk in this amount of time. So it's like one or two things. So many of my friends have gotten pre approved just from this advice, and which is what I stand by. And it's just like take 30 or 40 minutes outside of your out of your day, talk to a loan officer, and let them put you on a game plan and say, hey, pay this off, pay that down, or do this, file taxes this year, and we can get you pre-approved, right? Instead of being afraid of, oh, I'm not ready, go find out why you're not ready and what you got to do to get ready. And it's helped so many of my friends and family just get over that first hurdle of being afraid of the no,
Mhm.
and they either get pre-approved on the spot or they get a game plan, which I love game plans. I'm an athlete. Like, you give me the play coach and I'm gonna run the
Let's
play.
do it.
And that's what it's about. You go to the loan officer and you get the playbook and then you follow that. You know what I mean? And no, so congrats to you, and for not only having the conversation, but to just not let it fall on deaf ears, because you could have been like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But you had the courage to be like, all right, let me see how legit this is. And now look at you. So I agree completely. One conversation can definitely change your life, but also being open to the knowledge that you're getting is super important too.
100%. I couldn't agree more. It's literally like just the craziest thing in the world. Like when, like you said, like it could just be like, one small conversation with the loan officer, and like it could totally change everything.
Mhm.
Like something else that somebody just kind of like, mentioned, and like, to them it was no big deal, but to me, like it totally changed everything, was like the potential difference in pre-approval from getting like a regular duplex to like a 3 or a 4 family, because like the extra rental income coming in. Like
Yep.
my pre-approval, like it didn't double, but it was close, and like that type of thing, like somebody just happened to say it, like catch it in a conversation, and it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, wait a minute, like is that for real?
No,
Like it's this
absolutely.
is what I love about real estate, Charne, is like all it takes is like literally like one sentence, like not even, like probably literally just like a couple words. And
Mhm.
like that could be like, put you in a whole nother direction in life. Like it's
Absolutely.
the craziest thing in the world. Like
It literally, I tell you, my transition from rentals into sales literally came from a conversation I had with someone who became a big mentor to me. But he literally showed me a check one day for $10,000. I was a rental agent, I was making 1,000 there, 1,500 here, 2,000 there,
yeah,
decent checks. But I was like, wow, like he
this is
was like,
cool.
yeah, like 10 grand off of one deal. And he's like, yeah, I do sales. And it seemed so overwhelming to me. Like, you mean you help someone buy a house? Like,
What?
like that's a lot of money for someone to be trusting you to spend. But it was intriguing. And I asked him a million and one questions. And he sat and he talked to me. And I realized like it's a very similar process. You just got to learn a few more things. And I made that transition. And, it changed the trajectory of my career, of my life, because I went from sales into investing. But just being open to learn more. It really makes all the difference.
It does. It's unbelievable. It really is.
No, absolutely. So being open minded is super important, especially in this industry. Being willing to learn and just kind of following and executing the advice that you're given to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just really crazy.
It is.
So Charne, I like to ask this question because it usually trips people up a little bit. And I say this with love. How do you define wealth? It usually takes people a second to kind of think.
Right. I'm like, how do you define wealth? Um, I mean, I think it can be defined in multiple different ways,
Mhm.
but for me, it's about having like the resource to live like life on your own terms, whether that be mentally, spiritually, financially, everything. So, wealth to me is having financial freedom, meaning I'm not stressed about where my money's coming from, where it's going, being able to wake up and do whatever I want to do because of that financial freedom, to be able to be mentally and physically healthy. I think that that's the biggest form of wealth that we have. So I think all those things aligning, one, being able to live life on your own terms. In order to live life on your own terms, you have to be financially free. You have to have financial freedom. And what financial freedom does is it gives you the time and opportunity to explore your mental, physical, and social health. And so if I had to define wealth, having all of those three in line would be the wealthiest that you could be.
Yeah. I think it's really crazy like how those flow into each other too. Like you said, is like, if you can free up your time, from like your W-2 or, whatever like someone's situation may be,
Mhm.
now all of a sudden, like you said, like you can be going to the gym every morning and like you could be working on your business and like, like hanging out with your family or like whatever it is. And
Mhm.
like, all of a sudden, like you're getting stronger in all of those other areas. And like it's so crazy too, kind of like what we were talking about earlier about, just kind of like sharing like as much information as we can with people. Like it's like after, kind of like learning about this stuff and like financial freedom, for a little bit now, like it's it's almost like unfair, like just how like most people don't know about that. Like it's because it's just not common knowledge. And like, it's I don't know, like you just kind of see it from like an outside perspective after like
Yeah.
shooting for it and like, being around people where like it's so possible and like, these three people have done it and like, it's
Yeah.
I that's like that's something that yeah, I definitely strive to kind of do is to just, share that that kind of idealism because it's so true, it's like you can do it.
No, absolutely.
And yeah,
Absolutely.
sorry.
No, 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 no worries. I feel like you have to kind of just break it all down.
Yeah.
Think about what the bigger picture of wealth. A lot of people, when they first hear it, they think money, of course, finances. That's great. That's a big part of wealth, of course. But then what, right? Let's say you're financially free. Are you still wealthy? If you're sick, if you don't have time for your kids or your family, if, at what cost? So
Yeah.
for me, wealth is bigger than money. It's my health, it's my family time, it's control over the decisions I make, regardless if we want to admit it or not. A lot of decisions we make are based on money. Do you
Yeah.
get up and go to work? Well, if you need the money, you do. Do you go to your kid's game if it's at the same time you have to go show a house? Well, if you like, sometimes you have to make that decision. But to be truly wealthy means that none of the decisions you're making every day is based on money.
Yeah.
It's not based on whether or not, if I make this decision, I won't get this client or I won't, because you're already financially free. And I think that sometimes, I mean, not to say that money is everything, but if you're not financially free, not saying rich or whatever the case may be, but to the point where money is like a burden, then you can't truly make any other decision without it in mind.
Yeah. You're right. It's like you literally can't, like you have to have money coming in to pay the bills, and like it's either costing you your time or it's not.
Mhm. Basically, that's it. So my ultimate end goal is to get to a point where it's not like, I tell a lot of people who reach out to me, whether they be mentees or just looking for advices, and they're trying to build a portfolio and they want to know where to start, is, I like my college coach used to always tell us, like, ladies, keep the end in mind. On my freshman year, I remember we got practice jerseys, uniforms, everything that had the championship game date on it. 316, I'll never forget it. And
That's
every day
awesome.
in practice, we wore 316 shirts, 316 shorts, and it stood for March 16th. And so when someone was crying or whining about a suicide or missing free throws, she just said, keep the end in mind, girls. Like, look at your shirt, 316. You want to be playing in the championship game? And we look at each other like, hell yeah, we want to
Let's
be
do
playing in the championship game. And
it.
all of a sudden, you got that extra boost.
Yeah.
So, I tell people all the time, like, keep the end in mind. If you want to buy your financial freedom, do you know what your freedom number is? Do you know like what number you need to cash flow for you to feel like all your financial worries are gone? Because if not, you need to start there and then you can work backwards and you can kind of tack it out. House one's giving me 500. I can minus 500 from my freedom number. House two is giving me 1,000. Let me minus 1,000. And then you start building towards that. Once you reach your freedom number, you're free to make decisions without money in mind.
Yeah. I think that's the coolest thing in the world. That's awesome. I love that's one hell of an analogy too, of like, having that championship game like date, like from day one, like, this is what you're shooting for, and then it's almost like you can reverse engineer it to
Mhm.
like, oh, like game by game or practice by practice. And same type of thing for financial freedom, like you said, was like, oh,
Absolutely.
like if you don't have that final number, or like, that amount of like just cash flow coming in every month, like what exactly do you want to shoot for? I
Exactly.
feel like it's really, really difficult to kind of continue, right? Because like you're shooting and like that's great, but like if like what are you shooting for? And
Absolutely.
like if it's
Absolutely. What are you shooting for?
yeah,
You have to know the end goal and reverse engineer. I think that's absolutely it, especially in real estate. You got to know that end number. A lot of our calculations are determined off of the ARV,
hmm
after repair value. We start at the end and we work our way back. So I think that it's kind of transferable. It's transferable. So that's a lesson that I learned in college that I'll never forget. Shout out to the Wright State Raiders.
316.
You know what I'm saying? 316. And you want to know what's crazy is we made it to the championship that year. We didn't
Oh,
win.
what?
We lost in the championship game, but we made it
That's
to
all
the
right.
championship game.
You still hit the
Um,
goal.
and how many years later, like it's still an important life lesson that even if I didn't know it at the time, that I still hold with me today. So
Yeah. I love that so much. That's so cool. And like imagine like, where like everybody else is that was on your team, like, they can probably still remember that and be like, oh, like, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shout out to
Wow.
my Raiders. I'm sure if I call any one of them, they would reminisce. They would get like, oh, I remember when coach used to do this. And it's like in the moment, you think like, oh, why are they on my back? Or like, you don't always see the lesson in the
Yeah.
moment, but it's just amazing to see how that particular lessons, that particular lesson was transferable, and I still carry it with me to this day. And that's keep the end in mind. Always keep the end in mind, and that's when the deals are going good and when they're going bad. I've been on the flip side of that when I've been a part of deals and the numbers aren't adding up, and we're over budget or we're over the timeline. But it's either you can be upset, you can give up, and you can be, oh my God, I'm never doing this again. Or you got to remember, my end goal is to build a real estate portfolio, is to get capital from flipping, get cash flow from buying holds. And, if a couple of those deals don't go the way they're supposed to, I can cry about it and never buy again, or I can learn my lesson,
Mhm.
understand what my real goal is, and keep it moving, and try not to repeat it. So I try to keep that in mind, whether things are going good or bad.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I've seen that like more in the past couple weeks than ever.
Yeah.
Because I finally closed on a like my first three family, like just a buy and hold. And I've had in the first 2 weeks I noticed like both of my oil tanks leaking, like right off the bat. So that was like $5,400 right off the bat, like right after buying the house. And then
Mhm.
like a motor went to the furnace. That was another 500. And now I'm replacing the furnace right now. Like all of a sudden it's another like 11 grand, and like the amount of
Not in the
lessons that
budget. Oh yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and like the amount of lessons that, I've been trying to tell people from that experience go on. But um that's something that, like, to your point, like I've seen more now than ever is like, yeah, it really sucks in the moment, seeing like fuel leaking from your tanks. And like, one of them, like, you haven't even met the tenant yet. So that was interesting. But but
Oh man.
that was the thing, is like, all right, like I can be like really pissed about this and like, sell the house, put it back on the market, and like, wash my hands and never do this again. Or, you know, you can keep the end in mind, like you keep saying, and realize like, yeah, this sucks right now. But at some point down the line, like, you're gonna be laughing that you were even, this even like upset you. You know what I mean? And like at
Yeah.
some point, like, but for now, it's like, just kind of be able to step back, rationalize, figure out a solution. Yeah, it'll cost a bit of money, but like the lessons that I learned from that was like, how to deal with like a crisis situation. Cause of course it was cold as hell and it was like a Sunday night, like the
Mhm.
classic, you know, couldn't have been a
Yep.
worse time thing.
Yep.
Like just how to stay calm and like, how to make sure the tenants are well taken care of and warm for the night and everything. And like the amount of lessons from that, like, yeah, it sucks. I had to spend 5,400, all of a sudden that wasn't expected, but I learned like at least three or four lessons from that that I'm going to take for the rest of my career. So I'm like, well, I
Absolutely.
mean, in a way, like you're kind of it kind of cancels out. I mean, the way that I look at it, like it's the tuition costs, right? Like,
I like that one. I like that one. No, absolutely though. Absolutely. It sucks. Regardless, having expenses that come out of the blue are definitely um they, they can be deal breakers, or they could be spirit killers.
mhm,
But you got the right attitude, and it's a good thing that it's a buy and hold, so you have time to kind of get that back through appreciation and
yeah,
cash flow. um, but I think you have the right mindset overall, 100%. Even if it was a flip, and I've had that happen, uh, dealing with it now. I had to replace a heating system on a property I'm working on that I had no intention on replacing, that I
mhm,
didn't have in the budget. And it's like, it is what it is. The house needs
right,
heat, right? So
yep,
you got to figure it out. And those type of situations can be, like I said, they can be confidence killers. They can be like real mood changers in terms of how you approach real estate. But I think with each situation, you got to figure out, okay, how could I have avoided this? If I could have, what have I learned to do better next time? And then once you get over that, okay, all right, now what's the solution? That's it.
Exactly.
If you stay too stuck in the it happened to me and you don't get to the solution fast enough, it can literally make or break you.
It is. It's very discouraging.
Hmm.
Like it took me last year. I had 2 properties under contract that fell through, and like I was trying all year of like putting offers in, and like everything wasn't happening, and towards the end of the year, it was very discouraging.
Mm.
But you know, like all it takes, like one thing, like not to go on another tangent here, but like one thing like that's cool about real estate too is like you could be like getting dragged through the mud for a while, and then all of a sudden like something crazy happens, and it's like you're on this high all over again, and like everything just changed, and I think it's like just the coolest thing in the world, because
It
like you
is.
never know. Like
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I get it 100%.
it's
I've been
definitely
on
a
the
test
highs
of
and the lows.
Yeah, it's definitely a test of your mindset, and like just pushing through the garbage, and eventually you're gonna make it. Keep that long-term vision.
There it is. There it is. I always say real estate, just your success is determined by how creative you can get
Yeah.
because shit always happens.
Mm-hmm.
It always happens, but how you pivot and how you react to it is the make or break.
It is.
It is, you open up a wall, you just never know.
Mm-hmm.
Someone could look amazing on paper and you rent them their apartment, and I've dealt with it. They don't pay their rent for over a year. Like I've been there, like, and I was like, man, F this, I'm done with real. Like I had a temper tantrum
Yep.
and I was able to regroup. And then you got to think bigger picture. And that's why your why has got to be important. What are you really doing this for? You know?
Exactly.
Um, so yeah.
It's so true.
So true.
So Charne, I got one more question for you.
Awesome.
It's Do you read, and what is your favorite business, investing, or real estate book that you would recommend to anyone? Or like a podcast or audiobook
Mhm.
or anything that you consume?
Awesome. I'm definitely big on the podcast and like the audibles. Um, I would say my number one real estate podcast that I'm listening to right now, actually, I have a couple. Biggerpockets, which is like a super popular one. So if you haven't heard of it, definitely look it up. um, I've recently gotten into this podcast called Rants and Gems, and it's just rants about the industry, the negative side, and then the gems, which basically focus on those little tidbits that we talked about earlier on, can make a difference in someone doing a deal or not doing a deal or buying a house. So shout out to both of those podcasts, and I look forward to catching up on a few more of your episodes as well. So thank you for introducing me. Hey, thank
Definitely.
you for introducing me.
I'll have to check out that the Rants and Gems one. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's on the EYL Earn Your Leisure Network.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Earn Your Leisure is pretty popular right now, and the Rents and Gym focuses solely on real estate. They have a super high level broker and a mortgage officer who are the two hosts. And I learned a lot from them, just little gems. Each episode has that one little gem that oh shoot, I never thought about that. And I appreciate that. So those are my top two, for sure. Right now, I'm actually reading for book-wise. I'm reading Long Distance Real Estate Investing, which
Mhm.
is by David Green. He's from Biggerpockets, which I love those guys. But the book is really good. I'm actually preparing to venture out of state.
All right.
So the book has been super, helpful in terms of getting me motivated and confident to step outside of Massachusetts. So far, it's a good read.
Definitely. That one is super, super good.
Yeah, have you read it?
I have.
Oh,
I
nice,
read a
nice.
couple of the BP ones.
Yep, yep. I've read a couple too. I just picked this one up, I think last week, and I started it because, like I said, I'm really looking to venture out of state as I'm in the process of scaling my rental portfolio.
Definitely. So
Yeah.
Charne, where on like social media can you be found? Like you, the company, your agent stuff, everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm an agent, like you said. I have a team with EXP Realty, the CDIG team. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook, CDIG team. That's our handle. CDIG Realty team. Sorry, yeah, CDIG Realty team. And then you can find my investment group where we buy, we rehab, we hold. You can find us at C Dixon IG, and that's on Instagram, that's on Facebook, Twitter, all those handles as well. Not on that page, you'll see more of like my fix and flips and my transformations of bathrooms and kitchens and et cetera. So always looking to connect with retail buyers as well as investors.
Cool, cool. I'll drop all that stuff below. Thank you
Yes,
very,
yes.
very much for coming on here, Charne. That was absolutely amazing.
No, no, I appreciate you having me. This is a great conversation. And keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate this platform.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully, you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.